Welcome to Slow Night Ancient Tales. Tonight we journey back into the misty twilight of the Silla Dynasty. Close your eyes, let go of the day's burdens, and allow these ancient chronicles of dreams, dragons, and quiet snow to guide you into peaceful slumber. Episode 1: King Wonsong and the Flute of the Calming Waves. Long ago, when Ichan Kim Ju-won first ascended to the highest seat of Prime Minister, the future King Wonsong served just below him as the second minister of the realm. One quiet night, the future king drifted into a vivid, unsettling dream. In this vision, he stripped off his official black silk cap, placed a simple white traditional hat upon his head, and stepped into the deep, echoing well of Cheonghaejin Temple, carrying a 12-stringed gayagum in his arms. When he awoke, his heart was heavy with anxiety. He summoned a diviner to interpret the dream. The diviner spoke with a grave voice. To remove your official cap means you will lose your position. To carry an instrument means you will wear the wooden stocks of punishment. And to descend into a well signifies that you will be cast into a dark prison. Terrified by this prophecy, the future king locked the heavy doors of his home and refused to step outside into the world. During this time of seclusion, an official named Akan Yosam repeatedly sought an audience. The future king pleaded illness, but Yosam was persistent, begging, "I ask only to see you just once." Finally, the doors were opened. When Yosam gently asked what burdened his master's heart, the future king confided the dark prophecy of his dream. Yosam rose, bowed deeply, and smiled. "My lord, this is truly a magnificent and auspicious dream. If when you ascend to the highest seat in the land you do not forget me, I will reveal its true meaning." After the room was cleared of all attendants, Yeosam whispered the true interpretation. To remove your official cap means there is no longer anyone standing above you. To wear a white hat signifies that you will soon wear the royal crown. To carry the 12-stringed gayagum means your royal lineage will pass down through 12 generations of descendants. And to enter the temple well is a sacred sign that you will triumphantly enter the royal palace. The future king asked in wonder, "But with Prime Minister Ju-won standing above me, how could I ever reach the highest throne?" Yosam replied gently, "You need only offer a quiet, secret sacrifice to the deity of the northern stream." And so he followed this wise counsel. Not long after, King Heungdeok passed away. The people and the ministers gathered to welcome Ju-won as their new monarch. But on that very day, a sudden heavy rain swelled the waters of the northern stream. Ju-won, whose home lay on the northern bank, was trapped by the raging flood and could not cross. Seeing the hand of heaven at work, the court turned to the future king and escorted him into the palace first. The prime minister's followers soon arrived to bow and pledge their loyalty to the new sovereign. This was the 38th monarch of Silla, King Wonsong, bearing the name Gyeongsin of the Kim clan. Ju-won gracefully withdrew from politics and lived out his days peacefully in Myeongju. By the time King Wonsong ascended the throne, the wise Yosam had already departed this world. Remembering his promise, the king summoned Yosam's children and bestowed honorable titles upon them all. The king's own lineage flourished, blessed with 5 royal grandchildren: Crown Prince Hyecheong, Crown Prince Haeonpyeong, Yeong, Lady Daryong, and Lady Soryong. The great king deeply understood the profound, shifting currents of the universe, composing a mystical song entitled Singong Sanega, though its verses have sadly faded into the mists of time. From his father, he inherited the greatest sacred treasure of the kingdom, the Manpasikjeok, the legendary bamboo flute that calms the waves of the sea. Because he possessed this divine relic, the blessings of heaven rested heavily upon his reign, and his peaceful virtue radiated to distant shores. In the autumn of his second year, the King of Japan raised a naval fleet to invade Silla. Yet upon hearing that the legendary calming flute rested within Silla's vault, he quietly withdrew his warships. Soon after, an envoy arrived bearing 50 ounces of gold, asking to be granted the flute. King Wonsong calmly replied, "It is told that the flute existed long ago during the reign of King Jinpyong, but its whereabouts today remain unknown." The following summer, another envoy arrived, offering 1,000 ounces of gold just to gaze upon the sacred object once before returning it. Again, the king politely declined, gifting the envoy 3,000 ounces of silver for his journey and refusing the gold. When the envoy departed, the king safely hid the flute deep within the Naewongjun hall. Pacing, subtle shift to a mysterious, enchanting tone. In the 11th year of his reign, a Tang Dynasty envoy visited the capital. The day after the envoy's departure, two mystical women appeared in the palace courtyard, pleading in tears. "Your Majesty, we are the wives of the guardian dragons who dwell in the springs of Dongji and Cheonghaejin." The Tang envoy brought two spellcasters from the Hexi region who placed a dark charm upon our husbands, as well as the dragon of the Bunwangsa well. They have transformed our dragon lords into tiny fish, trapped them inside a bamboo tube, and are carrying them away. We beg you, issue a royal decree to save the guardian dragons of our land. King Wonsong immediately rode out, pursuing the envoy all the way to Hyeongwan. There, he hosted a grand banquet and sternly confronted the foreign spellcasters. "Why have you captured the three guardian dragons of our kingdom? If you do not speak the truth, you will face the severest consequences." Terrified by the king's divine insight, they surrendered the three tiny fish. When the king ordered the fish returned to their sacred ponds, the waters suddenly surged over 6 feet into the air, and the dragons leaped with joyous freedom as they swam into the deep. The Tang envoys could only marvel at the king's radiant wisdom. Soft, whimsical. During this era of peace, the king invited the venerable monk Jihai to lecture on the Avatamsaka Sutra at the palace for 50 days. Among the attendants was a young novice monk named Myeojong, whose daily duty was to wash alms bowls at the Gomgwangjong well. Every day, a turtle would float up to the surface of the well to greet him, and the kind young monk would playfully share his leftover food with the creature. As the 50-day assembly drew to a close, Myeojong smiled at the turtle and asked, "I have shared my meals with you for so long. How will you repay my kindness?" A few days later, the turtle gently coughed up a radiant, tiny bead and offered it to the young monk. Myeojong took the bead and tied it securely to the end of his belt. From that moment on, a strange magic filled the air. Whenever the great king looked upon Myeojong, his heart filled with overwhelming affection and respect. He summoned the young monk to the royal palace and kept him constantly by his side. When a high-ranking official prepared to travel to Tang, China as an envoy, he too felt an irresistible fondness for Myeojong and begged the king to allow the young monk to accompany him. In the grand court of Tang, the emperor took one look at Myeojong and instantly cherished him. Every minister and courtier treated the humble novice with profound reverence. However, a royal physiognomist whispered a warning to the emperor. "Your Majesty, I have studied this young monk's face. He possesses no natural features of high fortune or charisma. For him to command such universal affection, he must carry a sacred charm." The emperor ordered a search, and soon the small bead tied to Myeojong's belt was discovered. Upon seeing it, the emperor gasped, "I once possessed 4 wish-granting jewels, but I lost one inside the palace last year. This is my missing jewel." When questioned, Myeojong recounted the story of the well and the turtle. The very day the emperor had lost his jewel in China was the exact day the turtle had gifted it to Myeojong in Silla. The emperor reclaimed his jewel and sent Myeojong home. With the bead gone, the spell of enchantment lifted, and from that day forward, no one ever looked upon the young monk with unusual affection again. When King Wonsong's long and eventful reign ended, he was laid to rest on the western slopes of Mount Toham at Donggaksa Temple, where the great scholar Cho Chi-won inscribed his memorial. He left behind a legacy of peace, having built Boensa Temple and Mangdongnu Pavilion, forever honoring the ancestors who paved his path to the throne, the early snow. In the shifting tides of the Silla court, the heavens often spoke through the quietest elements. During the 41st generation, in the twilight of King Heungdeok's reign, an unseasonable frost touched the land, and snow fell silently from the autumn sky on the 15th day of the 8th month. 10 years later, in the 13th year of King Heungdeok, winter lingered deeply into the spring, blanketing the kingdom in heavy snow on the 14th day of the 3rd month. And generations later, during the reign of King Munsong, a deep heavy snow descended upon the green earth on the 19th day of the 5th month. Later that same year, on the 1st day of the 8th month, a profound darkness swept across the sky, shrouding the heavens and the earth in temporary twilight. King Heungdeok and the Parrot. In the second year of the Baoli era, the 42nd monarch, King Heungdeok, ascended the royal throne. Not long after his coronation, an envoy returning from the distant Tang Dynasty presented the king with a rare and exquisite gift, a pair of vibrant, talking parrots. The king delighted in their companionship. Yet before much time had passed, the female bird fell ill and quietly died. Left alone in its gilded cage, the surviving male parrot was overcome with grief. Day and night, it cried out with a sorrowful, echoing lament that touched the hearts of everyone in the palace. Wishing to comfort the lonely creature, the benevolent king ordered a clear mirror to be hung directly in front of the bird. When the parrot looked into the glass and saw its own reflection, its dark eyes brightened. Believing its beloved mate had finally returned, it hopped forward and joyfully pecked at the mirror, trying to preen the feathers of the image before it. But as its beak met only the cold, hard glass, the bird slowly realized the tragic truth. It was merely a fleeting shadow. Overwhelmed by a loneliness too deep to bear, the parrot wept its final mournful song and passed away. Moved by the depth of the little bird's devotion, King Heungdeok composed a song of grief to immortalize its memory, though the melody has long since dissolved into the silent winds of time. Episode 4. King Sinmu, Yeomjang, and Gungpa. Before he ever wore the crown, the future King Sinmu lived in the shadows as a prince in exile. Desperate to reclaim his rightful place, he sought out the formidable naval warrior Gungpa, known to history as the great maritime lord, Jang Bogo. The prince spoke with intense resolve. "I have a bitter enemy with whom I cannot share the same sky. If you lend me your strength to eliminate my foe and help me ascend to the throne, I promise to take your daughter as my royal queen." Gungpa agreed to the pact. Uniting his ships, his soldiers, and his tactical brilliance, he marched upon the capital, cleared the path, and successfully placed the prince upon the royal throne as the 45th monarch of Silla. Yet, when the new king moved to fulfill his promise and elevate Gungpa's daughter to queen, his court ministers rose in fierce opposition. "Your Majesty," they argued, "Gungpa is a man of humble and obscure birth. It is entirely improper for the ruler of Silla to take a commoner's daughter as the mother of the kingdom." Swayed by the relentless pressure of his court, the king broke his vow. Far away in the island stronghold of Cheonghaejin, Gungpa commanded the naval garrison. When news arrived of the king's betrayal, deep resentment took root in his heart, and whispers of rebellion began to stir along the coast. Sensing the gathering storm, a military officer named Yeomjang approached the king. "Gungpa harbors treacherous designs against the throne," Yeomjang quietly reported. "Grant me your leave, and I shall eliminate this threat for your Majesty." Relieved, the king secretly granted his royal permission. Yeomjang traveled to the coastal fortress of Cheonghaejin. Upon arriving, he sent a humble message to the maritime lord. "I have incurred the king's displeasure over a trivial matter and fear for my life. I have come to entrust my fate to you and seek sanctuary under your banner." When Gungpa heard this, his eyes flashed with old anger. "Your fellow courtiers poisoned the king's mind and rejected my daughter. How dare anyone from the capital come to seek my favor?" Yeomjang answered softly through the messenger, "That betrayal was the doing of the civil ministers. I am a soldier, and I had no part in their deceitful plots. I pray you, let go of your anger and grant me shelter." Appeased by these words, Gungpa opened his gates and welcomed Yeomjang into his grand hall. "What truly brings you to my remote shores, my friend?" he asked. Yeomjang bowed his head. "I simply sought to escape the king's unreasonable wrath. Under your commanding wing, I know my life will be safe." Pleasantly reassured, Gungpa smiled and said, "You are truly welcome here." To celebrate the arrival of his new ally, Gungpa ordered a magnificent banquet. As the night deepened and the wine flowed freely, Gungpa's vigilance dissolved into laughter and warmth. Waiting for the precise moment when the great general's guard was down, Yeomjang swiftly seized Gungpa's own heavy sword and struck him down in the hall. Panic and awe swept through the garrison. Leaderless and terrified, Gungpa's soldiers dropped their weapons and bowed to the floor in surrender. Yeomjang led the subdued forces back to the capital, presenting his report to the throne. The maritime lord is no more. Overjoyed by the removal of his greatest fear, King Sinmu showered Yeomjong with lavish rewards and bestowed upon him the high noble rank of Agan. And so, the turbulent tides of ambition and betrayal sank back into the quiet, deep history of the Silla Sea. The ancient courts have long since turned to dust, and the calming flutes slumber in the earth. Rest your mind now, leave the stories to the night, and sleep well.